Hello and welcome to Kabbalah of Adam. We are going to continue our study today in the Book of Ezekiel. I hope that everyone was able to look at... Hello Glenn, good to see you, brother. I hope that everyone was able to watch the little Star Wars video I put up there, because that is really a good visual representation of the whole Histoshalut. When the signal comes from the top, everything else goes, and it has the awesome ice in it that we will get to today. And on the other side of the glass, it's you, which is Adam. As we have been studying Masa Breshit, Masa Merkava, Hashmal, Noga. So this leads us to, hello Karen, this leads us to one of the greatest questions in Torah that is almost impossible to answer. What is a Jew? What is a non-Jew? And what is anti-Semitism? Because if you cannot explain Hashmal, then you can't explain what a Jew is. If you cannot explain Noga, you cannot explain what a non-Jew is. And if you cannot explain the Klippa, or the Akarain, the other side, you cannot explain what anti-Semitism is. This is the difficulty, because Masa Merkava, understanding and learning this topic that we're learning, is what Torah is. Hain, from our other classes. Yes. When you're doing this, you are doing actual Torah. You're doing Torah, okay? When you're learning Humash and all these other, the prophets, the writings, whatever, you are experiencing Torah, you're learning Torah, but only when you're in Masa Merkava, like the prophets and Moses and David and Solomon and everything, doing tikkun, doing stimulation from below, then you're actually doing Torah. It's actually happening. So today we have a real exciting class, I think. I think you'll learn a lot, and let's do our prayer and get right in it. Ruler of the universe and master of all masters, Father of mercy and forgiveness, we thank you, our God and the God of our fathers, by bowing down and kneeling, that you brought us closer to your Torah and your holy work, and that you enable us to take part in the secrets of your holy Torah. How worthy are we that you grant us such a big favor. That is the reason we plead before you, that you will forgive and acquit all of our sins, and that they should not bring separation between you and us. And may it be your will before you, our God and the God of our fathers, that you will awake and prepare our hearts to love and revere you. And may you listen to our utterances and open our closed heart to the hidden studies of your Torah. And may our study be pleasant before your place of honor as an aroma of sweet incense. And may you emanate to us light from the source of our soul to all of our being. And may the sparks of your holy servants, through which you revealed your wisdom to the world, shine. And may their merit and the merit of their fathers and the merit of their Torah and holiness support us, so we shall not stumble through our study. See, we're plugging into everything above us, which is Masa Breshit. And when we teach Torah, and now it's Masa Merkava. And by their merit, enlighten our eyes in our learning, as stated by King David, the sweet singer of Israel. Open my eyes so that I will see wonders from your Torah, because from his mouth God gives wisdom and understanding. May the utterance of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart find favor before you, God, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. So, for those of you who are not sitting here live, I ask before class, what is so significant about the book of Ezekiel than any other book in Torah? And Teresa said, well, it's got Masa Merkava in it. Exactly right. And Masa Merkava is how all the prophets were able to prophesy. It's how all of them heard from God. So if somebody tells you, God told me, if they did not hear an audible voice of Bat Kol, they are not doing Masa Merkava. They did not hear from God. Now, you have a good inclination and an evil inclination. If your evil inclination makes you do something, quote unquote, the devil made me do it, okay? Or if you have a inspirational thought, a correct thought, a good thought, and you do it, you are then going through your good inclination. Not that it doesn't come from God, because it does, but he's not speaking to you. There's a difference between getting a internal quote unquote message, but Ruach HaKodesh is completely different because you are seeing it, you are hearing it, you are experiencing it. That is something that has been shut off since the sages, you know. Now there have been few in recent, the Leshem being one, Vali and Ramchal and the Rizal and these guys like that, but you know, it's very rare that you hear an audible voice. So don't confuse the Bat Kol with good inclination, evil inclination, because everybody out there, God told me to tell you. If God told me to told you to tell me, he'd have told me, right? So we'll look at it like that. Now, the thing about Ezekiel is the first chapter is Masa Merkava. Not 14, 13, 25, somewhere hidden in the middle of the book. It is right in your face. And it starts with Masa Merkava, and what does it end with? The third temple. Do you see? The end is rooted in the beginning. All right? This is a book of strength. It's a book of hope, because Masa Merkava is how God's running everything. And the culmination of it all is the third temple. No other book in Torah is this. All right? This is very important. And as we go through, you're going to see all these men in, we hear all the time, the Talmud's written by men. Well, guess what? The whole Chumash was written by men. There's not a book in here that wasn't written by man. The difference is, did they think they hear God, or did they actually hear God and experience God? There's a big difference between men and a tzaddik. Between imagination and actually experiencing Merkava, which these men did. So did every man in the Talmud. Because why? They teach Masa Merkava all through it, especially in the book of Hagiga. The whole book is dedicated to it pretty much. Okay? We learned last week, what is the secret of the Sefer Yetzirah, the book attributed that Abraham wrote? It's Masa Merkava. So Abraham was the one that really brought this teaching into existence through Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation, where it's Yetzirah. Where is Ezekiel prophesying from? Yetzirah. All right? So we're going to start seeing all the pieces of the puzzle kind of come together, I think, as we're going through this. So what we have in Ezekiel is it starts out in book 1 and gives you the basics of Torah. Masa Merkava should be in every Torah class number 1, Torah 101. But everybody wants to know, well, how did Cain kill Abel? Well, what is Nimrod? Well, who are the Nephilim? Well, all this other. If you understand Masa Merkava, Masa Breshit, all that other stuff will start falling into line quickly. That's why it's the first chapter. It's where does God want to hide something? right in front of your face. And everybody reads this and goes right over it. It's the first chapter of exile. This is the Torah in exile. This is how everything works.
Well, they want to get to the end where the temple is.
They want to get to the end where the temple is, but you can't get to the end where the temple is until you know how God's running the system. Mm-hmm. This is what makes Ezekiel such a special book, okay? Because it's between the first temple and second temple, you know? Now, we are, this book teaches you the Pardes, the Peshat, the Remnants, the Drush, and the Sod, which is real Torah. Because if you don't loop the end into the beginning with the Peshat and with the Sod, it's not yes, yes. You know, this is the key, as we have learned in our previous classes. If you're just joining us tonight, please go watch all the previous classes. They are really good ones from Ravali. Now, let's turn our attention to the text. Ezekiel chapter 1, and we are at verse 19 through, we're going to go 19 through 25 tonight. I shall read it as one piece, and then we will go back through and read it line by line and answer line by line and explain the Peshat into the Sod. So, 19. When the Hayots would go, the Ophanim would go next to them. And when the Hayots were lifted from upon the surface, the Ophanim were lifted. Toward wherever their spirit would go, they would go. For there was a spirit to go. The Ophanim were lifted facing them. For the spirit of the Haya, remember there's the Haya again, was also in the Ophanim. When the Hayos would go, the Ophanim would go. And when they were halted, they halted. And when they were lifted up from the surface, the Ophanim were lifted facing them. For the spirit of the Haya was also in the Ophanim. There was a lightness of an expansion above the heads of the Haya, like the color of awesome ice, spread out over their heads from above. And beneath the expanse, their wings were even one with the other. This is written in the feminine here in the Hebrew. For each of them, 2 wings covered them. For each of them, two covered them, their bodies. That is written in the male. I heard the sound, the sound of the wings, like the sound of great waters, like the sound of Shaddai. Shaddai is the name of God. Does that have a sound? As they moved, the sound of the commotion, which is literally of the words in Hebrew, of the sound of the words, like the sound of a camp. And when they would halt, they would release their wings. There was a voice from above the expansion that was over their heads, and when they would halt, they would release their wings. So, we have learned how everything is mitlabesh, histashalut, one over, when one thing moves, the other thing moves, right? And when one receives, the wings are up and they receive, and then they give a portion below. And as they run and return to get this information, to get this shefa, that is the running and returning. So you have to understand, when they run and return, there's a halt in it. Go up, down, up, down. There's a slight pause. They never stop because they're going so fast. But if you turn down the frequency, there's always a slight pause. And this is what Ezekiel is explaining here in this piece, okay? So let's look at what Rav Vali says. I made a little note here to that was after verse 19, and I really want to read it first, because when the Talmud says "hein hein" or "yes yes," means this is real Torah. Now, you know the old cliche, you cannot see the forest for the trees? Mm-hmm. What is, from our last class, how would you take that cliche and turn that into a Torah statement? Turn it into a sod. We learned that forest, who is over the forest? And because when you're doing Torah, in Hagigah 14, remember the hein hein, and the trees started singing and all this stuff? Who is the minister of the forest? Sandalphon, which is the pardoning, which is the holy aspect of the pardoning. And trees are Yesod. So, which is all the Metatrons. So sometimes you can't see the forest, Sandalphon, because you keep looking at the singularity of the trees. You can't see the whole thing. Okay? So I took that statement and turned it into an actual Torah Kohen nugget. You know? Is that you can't see the forest for the trees. They're looking at angels so much they can't see the whole thing, the angel, the Haya, the Metatronic system. You know, it's all linked within linked, quadratically, horizontally, vertically. They can't get past it to see the whole unity of the system. Okay? This is real Torah. Now, to 19. When the Hayos would go, the Ophanim would go next to them. And when the Hayos were lifted up from the surface, the Ophanim were lifted. We have said concerning the matters, this is Rav Vali, we have said concerning the matters that 4D carries 3D and 4D directs 3D. Remember, your head is what makes your feet move. Even though your feet carry you, you cut somebody's brain off, their feet don't work. They carry the ones that are being carried, because this is a Merkava, a kava. This is where we get the term car from. Okay? The tires carry the car, but if you don't have a driver, the car doesn't move. So he says, they carry the ones that are being carried and support those that are being supported, whether they are in movement, which is horizontal, or in the vertical, which is known as the ascent, going up. Ritzov V'shov. Ritzov V'shov. Therefore, it says, when the Hayot would move, the Ophanim would move with them. And when the Hayot would rise up, the Ophanim would rise up from the surface also. Because the Hayot are what carries the Ophanim beneath them, and the Ophan do not carry the Hayot, like the head runs the legs. So, the Hayot themselves are being directed from the Ruach, the Spirit, the Ruach, that is above them. Now, Ezekiel is in Yetzirah. So we know Berea is above that, which is where Isaiah prophesied from. That's why it says seraphim in his. But when you're in Yetzirah, Berea and Atzilut are not separate at this point. That's what one man's ceiling is another man's floor, like an apartment. Okay? So the floor of Atzilut, Bia, is sitting on it. So the Hayot themselves that are being directed from the Ruach that is above them, that stands above them and spreads out in them. This is Metatron as is known. And the Metatron is the one above him that directs by the Shekhinah, which we're going to get to in that psalm that we read before class. The secret of my name is in him. Now, we've heard this, that Hashem says, don't go against Moses, don't go against the angel of the Lord, because my name is in him. Is that the name of, is my name male in him, or is my name female that's in him? We always think that it is, I'm God and my name's in him, right? It's, but this is the Shekhinah. Because male to female, now she is running the show. My name is in him, as Bina is to Zah. Metatron. My name is in him. Now, we're going to do a little math here in a minute, and you'll see how the thing kind of works. And this one is inside that one, etc., etc., etc. All the way to the Ein Sof that carries them all and is the neshama of all of them. So when the Ein Sof declares, it's going to go through Adam Kadmon, Ab Sagman Ben, Akudim, Nekudim, Berudim, through Atik Yomin, Atika Kadesha, Arik Anpin, Abba, Ima, Zah, Nuk, Shekhinah, now to the Seraphim, Hayot, and Ophanim. So, the head carries the feet. So, when the Ophanim show up, it is God speaking, you better believe it. Because it's like a cell phone. He's speaking, and they hand you the phone. You know what I mean? He says, this is the Malach. This is the Malach Metatron, as is known. And this is for humility. He is calling the Ruach above them Seraphim. The Ruach, the spirit that is above them, is the Seraphim. But it's called the Ruach. The spirit that is above them this is all Metatronics, right? Or before the sages had a term, Metatronics, what did they call it? Masa Breshit, Masa Merkava. How the system works. Because Metatron runs Bia, Beria Yitzir Nasiya. The Shekhinah is mitlabesh, garmented in, mitlabesh is where we get the term malbush. It's as we learned from our Enoch study, Metatron is garments the Shekhinah. So when Metatron is directing the traffic, so to speak, it's only under the Shekhinah's direction. My name is in him. Now, if you mess with him, you're messing with mama. When you mess with mama, daddy's, you know, Masa Breshit, Masa Merkava, Masa Breshit, boom, boom, boom. Shame, the name, is the female below it. So, it goes like this. He and his name are one. He and his name are one. My name is in him. So if you put the female in the middle, and the Guvarot in the middle, and the Hasidim on the outside, just for a visual. He and his name are one. My name is in him. You see?
Yeah.
He and his name, his Shekhinah, are one. Then the Shekhinah says, my name is in him. It is in him. It's in him this way. It's in him this way. It's in him either way. Because mitigated Guvarot is inside. What's garmented on the outside? Metatron. Metatron shows up. There's a Shekhinah there. You better believe it. Shmi, my name, Shmi, is Shin Yud, which means my Yud, my 10. My 10 Sfirot are in him. He is a complete gestalt. He's a completion. And then the next, and so remember when we started studying the first 10 Sfirot, when we started studying Sfirot a couple decades ago. All right, so this Sfirot has 10, and then if you look at Keter, it has 10, and then the Keter, that Keter has 10, and the Keter, and it goes infinitum. This is the secret of my name, is my Yud is in him, my 10, or my 10, my 10, my 10, my 10, my 10, my 10. The house of Metatron is in the prophet, the Navi. This is what it is written. As it says, wherever the Ruach would go, they would go. And Russell, what did it say in the Peshat about 68? This is going to be the prophecy, right? See how they equated, and we'll get to it in a minute, they equated what's coming down is prophecy. And that prophecy is going to be fulfilled.
And when it's done, doesn't it return?
And when it's done, it will return.
Yeah.
Everything will be in 4D, which is the secret of the end of Ezekiel. Ezekiel's temple is a 4D temple called the Mishkan HaNa'ar, the temple of Metatron. This is the upper Ruach, and the Ruach of the Hayot goes to the Ophon and elevates them when they are elevated. Then each Haya, which is the totality, is known as Metatron. Because Haya is the name, as we learned a couple classes ago, is the name of the Shekhinah when it is in union. So, let's read 19 again. When the Hayot would go, the Ophanim would go next to them. And when the Hayot were lifted up from the surface, the Ophanim were lifted. Now, let's read 20. Toward wherever there was a spirit to go, they would go. For there was a spirit to go, the Ophanim were lifted from the face of them. And for the spirit of the Haya was also in the Ophan. And 19 explains 20 there quite well. Now, verse 20. This one is in the one that goes back to the Ein Sof, the neshama of them all. Therefore it says, this one went, the other one went. The Ruach is the supernal Ruach directing the Hayot, that extends to the Ophanim and directs them and brings them up to them. Okay? The Ophanim were lifted opposite them, which means across from them. You know? There is no up or down, it's just layers. Even, it's going out. So they're across from them, but they're the lesser. Lesser. Because the spirit of the Haya was in them, the Shekhinah. The singular Haya is the 10 Sfirot that is in the Ophan. So each Ophan has a 10 Sfirot. It's a copy of its master. Furthermore, to make known the equalization of the operating system between the Haya and the Ophanim, the Hayot and the Ophanim, that they do not think or consider to alter or change the system, or the direction. Now, 20. Toward wherever the Spirit would go, they would go. For where there was a Spirit to go, the Ophanim were lifted facing them, for the Spirit of the Haya was also in the Ophanim. Verse 21. When the Haya would go, the Ophanim would go, and when they halted, they halted. And when they were lifted up from the surface, the Ophanim were lifted up facing them. For the Spirit in the Haya was also in the Ophanim. When they move, when they move, this moves. Now, remember back, Moses in the desert. God says, I'm sending an angel before you. Don't test him. He will not forgive your sin. What does Moses say? If your presence doesn't go with us, we're not moving. Was he arguing with God? Was he making a demand? Or was he stimulating Masa Mirkava? Because he knows that the signal, that the head, the Ein Sof, has to send the signal for the lower angel to move, or nothing moves. See? If you don't say move, we ain't moving. He wasn't arguing that he didn't want this angel. He knows Masa Mirkava. He's tickling God. He's stimulating from below. If we want you to send us. And so God says, okay, done deal. And the angel of the Lord went before Moses. But it says, but we know through Kabbalah and many scriptures, that Torah sources, it says it was the Shekhinah. Why? Because the Haya is in them. And we know that they set the camp up, and we just read camp, right? That they set the camp up in the structure of above. You know, with the 12 permutations of the Havayah, with the ark in the middle, with the Kohanim and the Levites, you know, from outer to inner, and the poles, as we've studied in the Parsha, are Gabriel, Michael, Uriel, and Raphael. All right? And we know that the ark carried itself. How can the ark carry itself? We just explained it. Because the one above it is carrying the carrier. So unless the Ophanim moved, the children of Israel never moved. Why? Because they're mitlabesh in it. They're hiblab shoot. They are connected. Israel never moved until the Ein Sof sent the signal down, and when the Shekhinah, which is garmented in the Ophanim, moved, Israel would move. When it stopped, they stopped. When it halted, they halted. All right? So God himself led them. Did the angel of the Lord do it? You bet. You see how you solve the kasha. You solve the kasha understanding Masa Mirkava. Now, we're going to understand all of the manna and all that stuff here in just a second. They're eating 4D food. What is it? All right? So, back to 21. Did we read 21?
No.
Yeah, we did. All right. So, there are 3 terms here. They went, which is one term. They went. This term is hashpa'a, means radiating out to that which is below. So when they radiated out their shefa to that which is below, they could move. The second term, they stood. When they are in the in-between stages, there's a moment of pause, running and returning. Third one, lifted. What is lifting? It is the ascent that they are called from above in order to receive that which they are going to return and distribute. So when Moses and the children of Israel were in the desert, this whole thing from Ophanim to Hayot, from Hayot to Seraphim to Shekinah, from Shekinah to Zah, from Zah to Bina, from Bina to Hokmah, from Hokmah to Keter, to all the way up. This whole thing is going like that. And when it gets a signal and when it comes back down, everything moves. Nothing moves without it. Nothing happens without Hashmal and its respective Noga. This is as it says in Isaiah. Isaiah 6, verse 3. So turn to Isaiah 6:3. Let's start at verse 1, so you get the context. In the year that King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord sitting upon a high and lofty throne, and its legs filled the temple. Seraphim were standing above at his service. Each one had 6 wings. With 2 it would cover its face, with 2 it would cover its legs, and with 2 it would fly. Verse 3. And one would call to another, say, Holy, holy, holy is Hashem, Master of Legions. The whole world is full of the glory. That is when they are receiving the Shefa from above. Okay? Now, let's look at 22. Well, let's read 21 again. When the Hayos would go, the Ophanim would go, and when they halted, they halted. And when they are lifted up from the surface, the Ophanim lifted facing them, and the spirit of Haya was also in the Ophanim. Verse 22. There was a lightness of the expansion above the heads of the Haya, like the color of awesome ice, spread out over the heads from above. What is awesome ice? Bavali says, however, after radiance comes down, pause and return, Ritzovashov, there is a 4th aspect called borders. There's a border to everything, right? What's a 4D border? Awesome ice. The mechanism is in the structure, that of the lower level, that is preventing them from going up. In other words, they have limitations that they cannot transgress or pass. They have, in the system, it only goes up so far and only goes down so far. Due to the limits of what they can receive. Because this is Guvarot. We live in Tohu. It has limits of what it can receive. So this Guvarot limits and circumscribes their ascent to what they can grasp. The amount of knowledge, the amount of shefa, whatever it is. They have a limit of what they can grasp. Similar to ice. That congeals and makes a boundary, which is the secret of don't say water, water. And the Pardes. Because there is no water. And there is no ice. It's like awesome ice. Awesome is the word norah, which means between. And Gibor means strength, which is the Guvarot, which is this awesome ice. And Gadol is great, as is in Hesed. This is the secret of, and the appearance on the heads of the Haya was one of an expansive of Ha Norah Karak, awesome ice. The ice is alluding to the prevention of the understanding or grasping, which is similar to ice. It's a blocking barrier. You can't go through it. That condenses and is formed from the cold. It can no longer flow like a river because it is part of the stage of the membrane that is between the frozen edge, like a cellular membrane or a one-way valve. So this is a one-way valve that they cannot transgress past, but they can receive from. Okay? So let's read 22. There was a likeness of an expansive above the heads of the Haya, like the color of awesome ice, spread out over their heads from above. Verse 23. And beneath the expanse, their wings were as one with the other, which is in the female tense, from which of them 2 wings covered them. For each of them 2 covered them their bodies, which is in the male. So it's female and male, because these are receiving and the ones lower are giving to the lower levels. Male. Masa Merkava, Masa Breshi. Furthermore, he says, just like is said regarding these feet, the Shefa coming down, and as we learned prior, their feet are on, it's just one leg. Remember, they only had one leg. Because it's like a funnel. You can picture it. The wing, they're getting all this Shefa, but they have one leg because it's condensed down because the world can't stand what's coming. So it's in a, let's just call it a funnel. All right? That is not a single one that receives more than is proper. This is the matter of their wings. For ascent, which is grasping the Shefa, the wings are opposite of the singularity of the feet. They spread out and all go upward. This is alluding to the equalization of all of them. They receive the straight light from above. They are not like the lower realms of separation that go in different directions of darkness. This is what it means. The wings are even as a woman to her sister. They don't translate it as a woman to her sister. Remember, like it was up at the top, we read that. They translate it even one to the other, like twin sisters. Okay, they're all like twin sisters. Once they receive from above, immediately after that, they conceal the matter. They conceal it. That's why it's covering their bodies. Revealed, concealed. They receive. Hold on. I'm sorry, I skipped. They do not reveal their consciousness and understanding that they receive to anyone not worthy. Their spirit is faithful to hide the matter within. The wings these are the wings that cover their bodies. So, you can't say God told me, because let me tell you, they would tell you. All right? So, they receive the matter of the Shefa or the prophecy or whatever it is, and they conceal the matter, funnel it down to a point, to a singularity, and they only reveal it to those that are worthy. Now, let's read 23 again. And beneath the expanse, their wings were even one with the other, as a woman to her sister. For each of those 2 wings covered them, and for each of them 2 covered them their bodies. Verse 24. And I heard the sound, the coal, I heard the sound of their wings, like the sound of great waters, like the sound of Shaddai, as they moved, and the sound of a commotion, or which is words here in Hebrew, the sound of the words, or like the sound of a camp. This is a great voice, certainly. So if you hear a great voice, certainly, you're in it. However, it is very pleasant to those who hear it. Thus is the voice of the supernal servants. When they ascend to receive, and perhaps he said the sound of many waters. Why? This is alluding to the Ma'im Nukvim, the Man, the sound of many waters. Stimulation from below. That ascend from them. And the proof of this is what it said after. The sound of many waters is the Man, and the sound of Shaddai is the Mod, the Ma'im Dukvim. So the sound of many, the Man's going up, the Mod's coming down. Just like we've learned for years, right? The Kol Shaddai, the voice of Shaddai, is the Mod that descends for the Shefa, for the emanation that is ongoing. Why Shaddai? Why two Kols? Kol, right? Kol, the sound, the voice of the waters, the voice of Shaddai. Kol. Masa Merkava, Masa Breshit, 4D, 3D, however you can plug it in any way you want. The Shaddai here is none other than who? The gematria of Shaddai is 314. Metatron. Because Shaddai is 314. This is alluding to he also. His powers are not coming from him, because there is no Metatron. It's coming from the Ein Sof, from above, from the greater, right? Lesser, greater, lesser, greater, lesser, greater, lesser, greater. And we learn there's greater, there's lesser of the lesser, and then there's the very small lesser, which are the Ophanim. Each one is mitlabesh, overlapping, garmented in the malbush, the garment, within the other. One onto the next. One onto the next. Because his power is only coming from Yesod HaKodesh. We can call that the Adamic Yesod, where the seed comes from, which is why you don't spill seed and feed the demonic other side, which is the secret of circumcision, cutting off the klipa, because that's where the mod comes from. Now you understand what the manna was. Because as they moved, the children of Israel moved. And because they were Merkava, they got the sound of Shaddai, the voice of Shaddai, right? Now, because Shaddai is the neshama of this Malach. As the sages say, his name is the name of his master. My name is in him. And why is Metatron called name? Because Shomer means to guard, like Shmi. Shomer means to guard. He's the guard. He guards everything. He guards beneath, he guards above, he guards the Shekhinah. He is the guardian and waiting for the supernal power that stands above him to direct him. He is the modulator, the interface of each level. as only and only releases to the lower level when it is ready or worthy. Because there is a Shoman above that, and above that, and above that, and above that. Metatron is in charge of the Hayot, and Sandalphon is in charge of the Ophon. And the Shekhinah is overall. My name is in him. She stands above all in greatness, as it says in Psalms. Elohim is holy. Why is Elohim plural here and not in the singular? Because it is explaining every level. Not multiple gods, mitlabesh of Metatron. Every level is greater, generating more Kedusha. The increase of Kedusha is the increase of Tikkun, repair. So, the more Shefa they start releasing to earth, the more Tikkun will start happening. And I believe we're seeing a bountiful release right now. It doesn't, because the higher evil gets and the more it comes to the surface, the more Shefa comes down. Just ask Pharaoh. I'll tell you all about it. The sound of the words of a company, which is in the end there. Mullah. You thought mullah was money. Mullah ain't money. Mullah, because the voice that is coming out of the mouth of the Hayot are praising their creator. The increase in volume and in harmony. And when they halted, they released their wings, as we explained above. The standing, the halting is only a pause. Why? Because they are about to receive from above and they are quiet. And at that moment, they are not flying, ascending, and they pause, waiting keenly in great humility. And the silence, no coal, no nothing. Wings are just the names of the Sphirot. Instead of calling them Sphirot, they call them wings that are receiving, their 10 Sphirot are receiving the Shefa from the 10 Sphirot above them as a condensing device. My Yud is in them. My name is in him. My name is in them. Because Shem is the body. Yud He Vav He. The Kinoi, Adonai, are the wings, the secondary name. My names are in the Sphirot. My name is in him. Doesn't matter if you're talking Sphirot, Hayot, Ophanim, Shekhinah, Metatron, Sandalphon. It's all the same operating system. Depends on if you're looking at the Pratim or the Klal. The singularity, we're studying Metatron, we're studying Sandalphon, we're studying how. Or if you can put them together in a string and see it, the whole unity and the whole totality of it, see the whole Hayat and the Shekhinah and everything, the armies of God, Hashem Sivaot, that comes with him. When God shows up, it all shows up. When the angels show up to talk with Abraham, God showed up, right? And God spoke. You don't have one without the other. So when these guys have angelic visions, it's God. All right? You can't say water, water. You can't make a division, right? So in that moment, so we have the body, which is Havayah, and the Kinoi, the Adonai, the wings, the secondary name. In that moment of the pause, the Yud He Vav He are operative, and it's receiving the sustenance. They're waiting for the holy names. But the system doesn't stop for a second, whether the primary names or the secondary names. And when you have the wings are stopped, and when the wings stopped and are released, they're releasing the secondary names and are waiting for the primary names again. Primary, secondary, primary, secondary. As a servant to his master. Now, when it comes the moment to receive the radiance from above, a new sound is generated. Let's read 24. I heard the sound of their wings, the coal of their wings, like the sound of great waters, like the coal, the sound of Shaddai. As they moved, the sound of the words, of the commotion, of the names, was like the sound of a camp. When they would halt, they would release their wings. Got it. Verse 25. There was a voice from above the expanse that was over their heads. And when they would halt, they would release their wings. Verse 25. That comes from beyond the awesome ice. What would be awesome? What would be beyond the awesome ice for these people? For the Hayot? It would be the Seraphim or the Shekinah or Metatron. Didn't matter. You can plug it in any way you want. What is the awesome ice? It is congealed divinity. Is a good term. The voice comes from above their heads. The voice is going out so they know it's time to receive. They tremble and retreat in humility and stand silent, awaiting for the radiance of their Creator. As it says in Psalms 68, 12 through 13. So turn to Psalms 68. (68, 12 through 13). The Lord made a declaration. The heralds are a mighty host. The kings of legions flee, they flee. And the dweller within its portion, booty. And that's the Shefa, right? So here's what Ravali says. These two verses describe what I have just explained. The word, the declaration, David is saying. David knows all of this. This is said that the words from above their head announcing to the Malachim, get ready. A great army of radiance is about to descend from above. The kings are the Malachim of the Merkava. That's why it says Malakah, angels. Angels and kings are the same. And the breast are Shadim. Okay, are we back? Yeah, we're back. Sorry. Okay. You didn't miss anything. Okay. So the word Madad, you can hear it Shaddai, Shadaim. The Ad means a nipple. Coming from Shadim, which means breast, which is coming from Shaddai, which is Yud He Vav He Metatron 3:14. Meaning, they are in such holy dread, it is if they do not even exist. When the angels encounter the Holy One, they are so afraid, it is if they don't even exist. That's how small they feel. And the holy Shekinah is the dweller of the house, and apportions out the Shefa, the nourishment. Yadum, Yad-dun. Flee, flee. Or nurse, nurse. Sustenance. They're nursing. The word Omer, spelled with an or, not an ayin. The ayin is like counting the Omer. This Omer is spelled with or, means the word. Or, Mime, Rekev. It's an acronym. In Omira means to talk. So the Aleph is Avir, which is air. The Mem is Mime, the water. And the Resh, Rachea, is the firmament. They are receiving 4D sustenance from above the firmament, is what David is coded in this word. The transfer from above through the worlds. The Shefa from the highest level descends and congeals from air to water to solid. Yedodim, Yedodim also means to go from one place to the other place. And it's translated flee, flee. She sits in her house and appoints her radiance. This is the Shekhinah. So let's read 12 and 13 again. The Lord makes a declaration. The heralds are a mighty host. Kings of legions flee, they flee. And the dweller is the house. The Shekhinah is the dweller. Within apportions the Shefa, the booty. Now, go back to Ezekiel. The booty. And we will read 25. There was a voice from above the expanse that was over their head. When they halt, their wings release. And David explained it even more. They're waiting for the words from the Shekhinah, from the Holy One that's always in union. And they are nursing because they're youth, they're little Metatrons. And as they get the Shefa, then they release the Shefa. And Ezekiel is giving us a frame by frame picture, sound by sound, moment by moment, what is going on with the play by play, with the running and returning. And next week, we will start at verse 26 and continue. Once we are done with this, we are going to then go into the Arizal, because the Arizal has a couple chapters on this, and we will see what he's saying and how it lines up with what Ravali's saying and what's going on here in Ezekiel's vision. And the Torah is amazing, and the sages are amazing, and I'll see y'all next week.